The hum of the Meridian's life support systems had become white noise to Dr. Elena Vasquez after 3 years aboard the research station. But today, something felt different. Maybe it was the way the artificial gravity seemed lighter in Sector 7. Or perhaps the faint ozone smell that clung to the air recyclers. Whatever it was, Elena found herself walking more slowly through the containment wing, her tablet forgotten in her hand as she approached Cell 7C. "You're early today," came a voice from within, melodic and tinged with an accent Elena couldn't place despite her linguistics training. "The chronometer outside your door is still blinking 0847. Elena paused at the reinforced transparent steel barrier. You can see the hallway chronometer from in there. Peripheral vision has its advantages when your ears pick up electromagnetic frequencies. A figure moved into view and Elena felt that familiar flutter in her chest that she'd been experiencing for the past 2 weeks. Lyra stood with her back to the barrier, those unmistakably elongated ears twitching slightly as she spoke. "Though I suspect you're not here about my auditory capabilities." The chains were what Elena noticed first, as always. Heavy iron manacles that seemed absurdly primitive against the backdrop of quantum containment fields and biome monitoring equipment. They caught the artificial light as Lyra turned, her movements fluid despite their weight. "Actually, I wanted to ask about those," Elena said, tapping her stylus against the tablet. "The requisition forms show them as personal effects, but that can't be right. Iron manacles aren't exactly standard travel accessories." Lyra's laugh was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "You'd be surprised what passes for fashion in the outer spiral arms, though I admit these aren't exactly a style choice." She held up her wrists, the chains clinking softly, more of a practical necessity. "Practical how?" "The containment field is rated for Class 7 entities. Nothing short of a quantum tunneling incident could you to keep me in, Dr. Vasquez. It's to keep you out." Elena blinked. "Excuse me. Don't look so offended. It's not personal." "Well, actually, it's entirely personal, but not in the way you're thinking." Lyra finally turned fully to face her, and Elena caught herself staring again at those ears. Not grotesque or alien, just elegant, like someone had taken human features and refined them with an artist's eye. "Tell me, Doctor, what do you know about bioelectric compatibility theory?" "I know it's mostly theoretical. Some species are hypothesized to share compatible nervous system frequencies, but there's no documented." Elena stopped mid-sentence as Lyra's expression shifted to something that might have been amusement. "No documented cases." "Right." Lyra moved closer to the barrier and Elena found herself stepping forward without conscious thought. "That's because most species with the trait don't survive first contact. Turns out overwhelming compulsion to merge consciousness isn't great for interstellar diplomacy." The chains clinked again as Lyra gestured and Elena noticed something she'd missed before. The manacles weren't locked. There were no keyholes, no electromagnetic seals, just simple clasps that could be opened with a thought. "So those are..." Elena's voice trailed off. "Self-imposed, yes, because without them, I would have opened this containment field 3 days ago and spent the next several hours seeing exactly how compatible our bioelectric patterns really are." Lyra's smile was rueful, and given that humans seem to have remarkably fragile psyches, that probably wouldn't end well for either of us. Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. That's quite an assumption about my psyche. Is it? You visited me every day for 2 weeks. Yesterday, you brought coffee. Terrible coffee, I might add, like someone liquefied anxiety and added caffeine. And today you're here an hour early asking about my jewelry. Lyra's ears twitched and Elena realized they were betraying amusement. Either you're conducting the galaxy's longest xenobiology interview or you're experiencing some of the same bioelectric resonance that's making these chains feel heavier every day. The station's intercom crackled to life, announcing the start of Gamma Shift, and Elena realized she'd been standing there for nearly 20 minutes. Her scheduled rounds were completely abandoned. I should go, she said, though her feet seemed reluctant to move. Probably wise, though, Doctor. Lyra's voice stopped her at the corridor junction. Tomorrow, if you bring coffee again, try the blues setting on the synthesizer. It's still terrible, but at least it's terrible in a way that won't make my ears ring. Elena found herself laughing despite the strangeness of the conversation. I'll remember that. Any other requests? Just one. Lyra's expression grew serious, and the playful glint in her eyes dimmed. Bring a longer chain. Elena's fingers danced across the holographic interface, pulling up file after file from the Meridian Xenological database. 3 cups of synthesized coffee sat cooling beside her workstation. She'd been at this for 6 hours. And Lyra's comment about liquefied anxiety was starting to feel uncomfortably accurate. Computer cross-referenced dimensional travel capabilities with species designation. What did she call it? A Featherin collective. The AI's voice filled her laboratory with its characteristic monotone. No records found for a Featherin collective in current databases. Expanding search to theoretical physics archives. Elena rubbed her temples where a headache was beginning to bloom. How was it possible that an entire civilization had made contact with the station without leaving any paper trail? She was reaching for her 4th cup of coffee when her door chimed. Come in, she called, not looking up from the swirling data streams. Still trying to figure out if I'm lying about my species. Lyra's voice made Elena spin around so fast her chair nearly tipped over. The chains around Lyra's wrists caught the laboratory's bright lights as she stepped inside, flanked by 2 security officers who looked thoroughly uncomfortable. How are you, the containment field? Oh. That turns out I'm not actually a prisoner. Lyra's ears twitched with what Elena was learning to recognize as suppressed laughter. I'm a visiting researcher. Have been for 3 months. Actually. Though I appreciate that someone finally noticed I was here. One of the security officers, a burly man whose name tag read Rodriguez, cleared his throat. Dr. Vasquez, command wants you to know that subject, I mean Dr. Lurlith, has full station privileges. There was apparently some confusion in the paperwork. Dr. Lurlith, Elena repeated slowly. You have a doctorate free, actually. Dimensional physics, bioelectric engineering, and what you might call applied empathy, though the translation gets fuzzy. Lyra moved to Elena's workstation, her chains creating a soft rhythm against the metal surfaces. Mind if I see what you've been researching? Your computer's been pinging our quantum communication array for the last several hours. Elena gestured helplessly at the holographic displays. I was trying to understand what you told me yesterday about bioelectric compatibility. About why you wear those. Ah. Lyra leaned closer to examine the data. Streams in Elena caught a scent like ozone and starlight. Well, you're looking in the wrong databases. The Ethetheran collective exists primarily in what you'd call parallel dimensional space. We've been observing your species for about 200 of your years, but formal contact only began recently. Formal contact. Elena's voice came out as a squeak. This is formal contact. Relax, Doctor. We're not here to probe anyone or steal your water supplies. Though your coffee situation is truly dire. Lyra's fingers moved through the holographic interface with practiced ease, pulling up files Elena didn't even know existed. We're researchers just like you. The difference is we've been studying the phenomenon of interspecies psychopathic bonding for millennia. Data cascaded across the display charts, showing brainwave patterns, bioelectric field measurements, something called quantum entanglement probability matrices. Elena felt like she was drowning in information she barely comprehended. This is revolutionary. Why isn't this public knowledge? Because the last time we tried public contact, it ended with half the research team requiring memory reconstruction and the other half filing for permanent reassignment to different galaxies. Lyra's expression grew rueful. Turns out, when you can literally share consciousness through touch, things get complicated fast. Elena stared at a particularly complex diagram showing what appeared to be two nervous systems merging into a single pattern. And that's what would happen if I took off these chains and touched you. Probably. Lyra held up her wrists, the iron gleaming dully. Though happen is a loose term. It's more like imagine if you could experience every emotion I've ever felt simultaneously while I experience yours while we both try to maintain some sense of individual identity. It's either transcendent or terrifying depending on your perspective. Has it ever worked? The bonding define worked. Lyra's laugh held a note of something Elena couldn't identify. Some pairs achieve stable connection. They become something new. Something greater than the sum of their parts. Others, she gestured to another chart showing brain patterns that look distinctly chaotic. Others lose themselves entirely. The laboratory fell quiet except for the hum of equipment and the soft clink of Lyra's chains. Elena found herself staring at those manacles again, understanding dawning slowly. The chains aren't just about protecting me, she said. They're protecting you, too. Smart and pretty. No wonder my bioelectric field keeps trying to sync with yours. Lyra's ears flushed slightly pink, a detail Elena filed away as possibly the most endearing thing she'd ever witnessed. Yes, Doctor. Because if we bonded and it went wrong, I'd lose not just my sense of self, but 300 years of memories and about 40 lifetimes worth of research. Data. 40 lifetimes. Etheriums live a bit longer than humans. Comes with the whole existing partially outside normal spacetime thing. Lyra moved away from the workstation, her chains trailing. Speaking of which, I should probably mention that my presence here is causing some minor dimensional instabilities. Nothing dangerous, but you might notice the occasional temporal hiccup or gravity fluctuation. As if on cue, Elena's coffee cup lifted slightly off the desk, hovered for a moment, then settled back down with a gentle clink. That explains why the chronometers have been running slow in this section, Elena said weakly. Sorry about that. I've been trying to keep my emotional state stable, but Lyra's ears drooped slightly. Let's just say it's been challenging lately. Elena stood up, moving closer despite every rational part of her mind screaming warnings. Why did you really come here, Lyra? Because, Lyra said softly, her voice barely audible above the hum of machinery in 300 years of existence. Across 40 different dimensions. You're the first person I've met whose bioelectric signature makes me want to risk everything. The coffee cup lifted again, spinning slowly in the air between them while Elena tried to remember how to breathe. The alarm clacks and started screaming. At 0347 station time, jolting Elena from the first decent sleep she'd had in weeks. Her quarter's emergency lighting bathed everything in red as she stumbled into her uniform, muscle memory taking over where her sleep-fogged brain failed. All senior staff to emergency command. The intercom crackled. Dimensional breach in Sector 12. This is not a drill. Elena's blood turned cold. Sector 12 was 3 sections away from Lyra's laboratory. She found chaos in the command center. Holographic displays showing what looked like tears in space itself. Jagged wounds bleeding impossible colors into the station's corridors. Chief Engineer Morrison was shouting at his console while Captain Hayes paced behind him like a caged predator. Report, Hayes snapped as Elena entered. 17 rifts so far spreading through the outer ring. Morrison called back. They're not following any pattern I can identify, and they're growing. We've evacuated sectors 11 through 14. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Where's Dr. Lurlith? Still in her lab, Hayes said grimly. She refuses to evacuate. Claims she needs to stabilize her emotional resonance, whatever the hell that means. Before Elena could respond, another alarm joined the cacophony. This one, the deep bone-rattling tone that meant whole breach. Through the viewport, she could see stars that were definitely not supposed to be visible from this angle, twisted into spirals by the distortion field surrounding the rifts. Captain Morrison's voice cracked slightly. I'm reading massive gravitational anomalies. It's like something's trying to fold space-seam into origami. Elena was already moving toward the door. I need to get to Lyra. Absolutely not. Those sections are captain with respect. Those rifts aren't random. Elena turned back, her mind racing through everything Lyra had told her about dimensional physics. They're centered around areas where she spends the most time. Her laboratory, the observation deck where she takes her walks, the mess hall where she's been trying to improve the coffee synthesis. Hayes stared at her. Are you telling me our guest is tearing the station apart? I'm telling you she's in trouble and we're all going to be floating in vacuum. If I don't get to her. Elena was already pulling up the station schematics on her portable display. Emergency conduits through Sector 10 should still be stable. Take Rodriguez and a security team. No. Elena shook her head. Extra. People will just make things worse. Her species bonds through bioelectric fields. More humans means more potential. Resonance, more instability. Morrison's console erupted in sparks as another rift tore open. This one close. Enough to the command center that the artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Elena felt her feet leave the deck for a terrifying moment before the generators compensated. Go, Hayes said tersely. But if you get yourself killed, I'm putting death by alien emotional crisis on your service record. Elena managed a weak smile. I'll try to die more professionally next time, sir. The emergency conduits were a maze of service tunnels barely wide enough for a single person, filled with the constant hum of power relays and life support systems. Elena crawled through maintenance shafts while the station groaned around her, metal straining against forces that shouldn't exist in normal space. She emerged in Sector 11. To find reality having what could only be described as a very public nervous breakdown. Gravity switched directions every few meters. Time flowed backward near one rift. She watched her dropped flashlight bounce back up into her hand. And the air itself shimmered with colors that hurt to look at directly. Lyra, she called, fighting her way through a corridor where the floor had apparently decided to become the ceiling. Lyra, where are you? In here. The voice came from the laboratory, but it sounded strained, distant. Don't come in. The field resonance is unstable. Elena pushed through the laboratory door and immediately understood why. Lyra stood in the center of the room, her chains glowing with some kind of energy discharge, while reality twisted around her like a maelstrom. Equipment floated in impossible spirals, and the walls showed glimpses of other places, alien landscapes, starfields, what might have been other versions of the station itself. How long have you been like this? Elena shouted over the dimensional static. About an hour started when I woke up from a particularly vivid dream. Lyra's voice carried a note of hysteria. Turns out dreaming about taking these chains off has measurable effects on local spacetime. A coffee cup materialized out of thin air, filled itself from a tap that existed in 3 dimensions. Simultaneously, then exploded into butterfly-shaped fragments that reformed as flowers before dissolving entirely. Okay, that's new, Elena muttered. The rifts are spreading. I can feel them branching through the station. Lyra's ears were flat against her head, her face pale with concentration. Every time I think about you, another one opens. Elena felt a flush of warmth, despite the chaos around them. You've been thinking about me. Are you seriously flirting with me while I accidentally destroy the station? It seemed like good timing. A console nearby decided to turn itself inside out, revealing circuitry that pulsed with organic-looking light. Elena ducked a shower of sparks that fell upward toward the ceiling. Can you control it? She called. Not alone. The resonance feedback is too strong. Lyra's chains clinked as she gestured, and each sound created visible ripples in the air. I need something to ground the bioelectric field to create a stable reference point. Elena looked around the chaos, her scientific mind racing through possibilities. The station's quantum field generators, Lyra's own bioelectric patterns, the resonance between their nervous systems, the containment field generators, she said suddenly, if we could modify them to create a resonance dampener instead of a barrier. It might work, but someone would need to calibrate the frequency manually, and that means standing next to you while you're having an interdimensional emotional crisis. Right. Elena started pulling off her utility belt, dropping everything that might interfere with bioelectric fields. What's the worst that could happen? We could merge consciousness, lose our individual identities, and spend eternity as a gestalt entity trapped between dimensions. Elena paused. What's the best that could happen? Same thing, but with better coffee. Despite everything, Elena found herself laughing. You know what? I've had worse Tuesday mornings. She stepped into the eye of Lyra's dimensional storm, reached for the field generator controls, and immediately understood why Lyra wore chains. Elena woke up knowing things she had never learned. The taste of rain on a planet with purple skies. The mathematical beauty of quantum harmonics expressed as music. The exact weight of 300 years of loneliness. Oh, she said aloud, then immediately winced because her voice sounded like wind chimes, and that was definitely not normal. Good morning to you too, came Lyra's voice from across the medical bay, though Elena somehow knew she was speaking without opening her mouth. How are you feeling about our accidental mind melt? Elena sat up carefully, noting that the station's gravity felt different. Not wrong, exactly, but as if she could sense the quantum field generators maintaining it 2 decks below. I can feel your amusement. It's like having someone else's emotions as background music. Welcome to my last 72 hours. Though, I have to say, your memories taste surprisingly cheerful. I wasn't expecting someone who keeps a collection of bad joke databases for emergency morale purposes. Elena blushed, which she could feel Lyra experiencing as a warm flutter of embarrassment mixed with affection. Those are classified research materials, right? Very scientific. I particularly enjoyed the one about the photon who refused to pay luggage fees because he was traveling light. Lyra's actual voice joined her mental one as she approached Elena's bed, her chains noticeably quieter now. Dr. Reyes says, our bioelectric fields are still synchronized, but the resonance cascade is stable. We're not going to lose ourselves apparently. And the station still exists, still in one piece, still serving terrible coffee, though there are some lingering effects. Lyra gestured toward the medical bay's window where Elena could see what appeared to be a small aurora dancing around the observation deck. Decorative dimensional rifts. Command is calling them atmospheric enhancements. Elena swung her legs over the side of the bed, marveling at how she could sense Lyra's relief at her movement before Lyra herself was fully aware of feeling it. What about the other crew members? Are they experiencing any effects? Nsai Martinez in engineering Reports that he suddenly understands quantum mechanics intuitively, but only when he's humming show tunes. Lieutenant Kim in navigation claims she can taste colors, but just the blue ones. And Chief Morrison swears his coffee tastes better, though that might be psychological. Or it might be because you've been unconsciously adjusting the replicator matrices through quantum field manipulation. Elena stood, testing her balance. Everything felt normal except for the persistent awareness of Lyra's presence at the edge of her thoughts. Can you sense what I'm thinking right now? Something about how my ears look particularly nice in this lighting, followed immediately by scientific curiosity about whether our synchronized brain patterns could be used to develop faster than light communication systems. Lyra's ears twitched, confirming Elena's assessment. The combination is surprisingly endearing. Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks again. This is going to take some getting used to. On the bright side, we'll never have to wonder what the other person is thinking during awkward social situations. Lyra moved to the medical bay's computer terminal, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. I've been working on a solution while you were unconscious. Look at this. The display showed a complex schematic of what appeared to be jewelry. Delicate bracers that incorporated both quantum field generators and bioelectric regulators. Quantum dampening fields. Elena studied the design. These would allow us to control the connection level. Variable resonance control. We can dial our synchronization up or down as needed. Full connection for research purposes. Minimal connection for daily activities. Complete disconnection if. Lyra's mental voice faltered slightly, if you decide this is too much. Elena reached out without thinking, stopping just short of touching Lyra's face. Even at this distance, she could feel the warmth of her bioelectric field. What made you think I'd want to disconnect? 300 years of experience with people who found out what I was and decided the risks weren't worth it. Lyra's voice carried decades of accumulated disappointment. Plus, I can sense your scientific fascination wearing with genuine terror every time you realize you're experiencing my emotions. The terror isn't about you, Elena said softly. It's about how much I want to take those chains off and see what happens. Lyra's eyes widened, and Elena felt the spike of surprise and hope that flowed through their connection. Even knowing what you know now about the risks, about how overwhelming it can be, especially knowing what I know now. Elena gestured at the schematic still floating between them. How long would it take to build these? The quantum field components we can replicate from existing station technology. The bioelectric regulators would need to be custom-tuned to our specific resonance patterns. Lyra's mental calculations flowed through their link. Complex mathematics that made Elena's head spin. Maybe 18 hours if we work together. Together. Your engineering background combined with my dimensional physics knowledge. Plus, I have to admit, thinking in harmony with someone else is remarkably efficient. We solved the resonance equation in about 6 minutes. Took me 3 weeks to work it out on my own. Elena looked down at her hands, still amazed that she could sense Lyra's presence so clearly without physical contact. What happens when we finish building them? Then we find out if this connection between us is just exotic physics or something more. Lyra's chains clinked as she moved closer. Fair warning, though, I can sense that you're already planning to test maximum resonance settings the moment we get them working. Guilty is charged. Elena grinned. But I can sense that you're just as curious about it as I am. More curious, actually. I've been wondering what it would feel like to experience joy without the weight of 3 centuries behind it. Lyra's mental voice carried a wistfulness that made Elena's chest tight. Your memories are so light, unencumbered. And yours are like libraries full of starlight. Elena finally gave in to impulse and reached for Lyra's hand, stopping just as her fingers brushed the iron manacles. We should probably start working on those bracers. Probably. Lyra agreed, though neither of them moved away. Though, I should mention that Chief Morrison wants to see us both in engineering. Something about the dimensional rifts interfering with the warp core's harmonic frequency. Are we in trouble? He mostly seemed concerned about whether we could teach the effect to the rest of the engineering staff. Apparently, our synchronized problem-solving is giving him ideas about improving efficiency ratings. Elena laughed, feeling Lyra's amusement harmonized with her own. I don't think that's how psychempathic bonding works. No, but imagine the paperwork we could complete. The quantum bracers felt surprisingly light on Elena's wrists as she made final adjustments to their resonance frequency. 3 weeks of round-the-clock engineering had produced something that looked more like elegant jewelry than advanced dimensional technology, though the soft blue glow emanating from the bioelectric regulators gave away their true nature. Resonance dampening at 12%. She announced to the assembled crowd in the main laboratory. Half the station's senior staff had gathered to witness what Captain Hayes had diplomatically termed the first controlled test of interspecies psychempathic technology. Translation: they want to see if we accidentally blow up the station again. Lyra murmured through their connection, her mental voice carrying fond amusement. She stood across the laboratory, her own bracers gleaming against her skin, the iron chains finally removed after 4 months of constant wear. The pale marks on her wrists had already begun to fade. Testing communication at minimal synchronization, Elena said aloud, then shifted to purely mental speech. Can you hear this? Crystal clear, though you're broadcasting your nervousness loud enough to pick up from the next star system. Lyra's actual ears twitched with suppressed laughter. Chief Morrison is placing bets on whether we'll accidentally create sentient coffee again. Elena glanced at Morrison, who was indeed holding a pad and taking what looked suspiciously like wagers from the engineering staff. Again, Tuesday's experiment got a little out of hand. The replicator in Section C is now capable of making espresso that argues with you about your life choices. I love that you consider that a minor side effect. Dr. Ree has cleared his throat from behind his monitoring equipment. All bioelectric readings are stable. Neural activity is synchronized but distinct. You're cleared for increased resonance testing. Elena felt her pulse quicken as she reached for the bracer controls. This was the moment they've been building toward full connection, complete synchronization, the thing Lyra had been too terrified to risk for 3 centuries. Wait, came a voice from the back of the laboratory. Ensign Martinez stepped forward, his expression serious. Dr. Lurlith, what happens if something goes wrong? If the bracers fail? Lyra was quiet for a moment, both mentally and vocally. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of all her accumulated years. Then Elena and I cease to exist as separate individuals. We become something new, something that's never existed before in known space. And you're willing to risk that. I spent 300 years afraid of connection, afraid of losing myself in someone else's identity. Lyra looked directly at Elena across the laboratory space. But isolation isn't preservation. It's just a slower way of disappearing. Elena felt tears prick her eyes, emotion amplifying through their low-level connection until the entire laboratory seemed to shimmer with possibility. Ready when you are. Increasing synchronization to 50%, Lyra announced, her fingers moving to her bracer controls. The world exploded into sensation. Elena felt herself expand beyond the boundaries of her own consciousness, touching something vast and ancient and brilliantly curious. Lyra's 3 centuries of memory opened like a flower, not overwhelming, but enriching, adding depth and context to Elena's own experiences. She could sense Lyra experiencing the same expansion, drinking in Elena's memories of laughter and friendship and the simple joy of discovery. Readings are stable, Dr. Reyes called, his voice seeming to come from very far away. Both subjects maintaining distinct neural patterns despite synchronization. How does it feel? Captain Hayes asked. Elena opened her eyes. When had she closed them and found herself grinning like having someone finish your thoughts, except they're finishing them with ideas you never would have had on your own, like having access to the universe's best research partner. Lyra added her own expression, radiant. Elena, your approach